Late spring in Pennsylvania is sometimes hard to predict. April this year was unusually rainy and warm. I usually have to mow the lawn for the first time in early to mid-May, but not this year. At least it's not snowing. Last year at this time we had a blizzard and 6 inches of snow fell. I guess having to mow the lawn early is worth it to avoid the snow. And since tax season is over, it was nice to be outside in the sunshine. My house has an interesting feature. The backyard slopes heavily downward and leads to a small creek and woods behind us. When the house was built, the front of the house was leveled off the road with fill. This meant a sharp slope about halfway down the side of the house. Thus, the basement, which was completely enclosed in the front, ended up open in the back. This allowed me to install a bifold service door so I could get my lawnmower and other lawn stuff in there, rather than cluttering up the garage. It was one of my favorite features of the house. I put the lawnmower away and everything fell into place. I'm allergic to grass, so I was anxious to get upstairs and take a shower. I was just about to get to the stairs when I heard my wife's voice. I had seen her friend's car when I was cutting the grass in front of the house, so I wasn't surprised to hear voices. But then I heard what was being said, and it made my hand pause as I reached for the doorknob. I probably should have started by introducing myself. My name is Robert Crane. I prefer to be addressed by my first name, Bob, but at school they called me Hogan, in honor of the actor Robert Crane who played the lead in Hogan's Heroes. I didn't mind, but the show was taken off the air before I was born and is no longer considered a pop culture reference. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with an accounting degree, still bearing the last name Hogan. I earned my CPA degree in minimal time after graduation and now work for a large firm in Philadelphia as a team leader doing audits and the like. It's not the most exciting position, but it pays very well and I've been able to see the inner workings of many companies. I have a special gift for forensic analytics, building financial trails to investigate things like fraud and money laundering. I'm considered an expert and have even been asked to advise the FBI on 2 cases. When we met at the beginning of freshman year, my wife Kelly was studying political science and business with plans to pursue a law degree. I was sitting waiting for the first day of class when she walked in. Kelly had a tall, slender figure, like a ballerina. Unfortunately, Kelly was not sitting next to me, or was not assigned to me in a group project. It took me 4 weeks to approach her and melt the ice. I made a silly joke and she laughed. It wasn't a graceful giggle, but a full-blown laugh. We started talking and I asked if she wanted to grab coffee after class. "I've been waiting 4 weeks for your question," she replied with a smile. For the last 2 years of college, we were rarely apart. Our parents weren't too pleased, but in our senior year of high school, we moved to live together. But they saw how devoted we were to each other and soon got over it. I couldn't see how things could get any better, but it did. I graduated from high school and immediately got a job at one of the big accounting firms in Philadelphia. I was making stupid money for a 22-year-old young man who had recently graduated. Kelly was accepted to the University of Pennsylvania Law School, and we continued to live in our student apartment. My company offered to pay for my MBA, and I started taking classes as well. I commuted to work every day on SEPTA, so I didn't need a car, and that kept costs down. 3 years later, Kelly graduated, and I proposed to her during a celebratory dinner at Morton's Steakhouse in Rittenhouse Square. 6 months later, we were married. Kelly accepted a position as a deputy district attorney in the Bucks County Prosecutor's Office, which is north of Philadelphia. We decided to buy a house in Doylestown, where the courthouse was located. The regional rail line ended there, and I could take the train to work every day. It was an 80-minute drive one way, but better than taking the Schuylkill Expressway, aka the Sirkill Expressway, or I-95. Kelly and her mother found a house. It was a great starter home with 3 bedrooms. One bedroom was set up as an office with 2 desks. I sometimes worked from home, and Kelly needed her own space for legal work. Another bedroom served as a guest room, and of course the last room was the master bedroom. Plus it was close to her parents' house. Kelly convinced me that it would be a built-in nanny when we had kids. I was an only child, and had always wanted siblings. Kelly and I started talking about kids back in my freshman year of university and decided to wait until Kelly was settled in her career before we started trying. But now we've reached that point, and 2 days ago we decided to stop taking Kelly's birth control and start trying for a baby. I was happier than ever. And then what I heard made my hand linger on the doorknob. Hogan and I have decided it's time for me to get pregnant, Kelly announced excitedly. This excited her friend, Olivia Watkins. Both women made the same high-pitched sound that made me think of whales accidentally beached on the Jersey shore and try to reach for them. Standing on the stairs, I grinned at their excitement, which matched my own at becoming a father. I reached for my pen again when I heard a question that wiped the smirk off my face and the happiness out of myself. That's great, Kel, Olivia said. But what are you going to do about Paul? With Paul? Shh, Kelly hissed at her friend. Hogan's outside mowing the lawn. There was a pause, and I could see her looking around, waiting for me to appear. Then she spoke again. I already told Paul I was ending the affair. He was fine with it. With Grossman stepping down as senator, Paul thinks he has a real chance. If he gets caught having an affair with a married staffer, it's going to be very ugly. That was it. 3 sentences shattered my world. Paul Evans was Kelly's boss in the DA's office. He was a widower in his early 40s. His wife Ann had died of breast cancer, and he was left a single father with their daughter Barbara. Paul was a real political animal, and Kelly enjoyed telling me stories of how he maneuvered his party to run for higher office. I guess I just found out how my wife had access to all this secret information. Really? Olivia said. Just like that? You've been hot and cheerful for 6 months, and you're just going to dump a stud with cupcakes? The teasing doubt in her voice made me want to rip Olivia's head off. She was a classmate at Penn, and I'd known her since before Kelly. I knew Kelly and Olivia were best friends now, but I always assumed she was my friend too. I guess I was wrong. Stop it, Kelly protested, giggling. You're so bad. Paul is a great lover, but playing with him was just rude. I love Hogan, but Paul was just taking me and using me however he wanted. Now that Bob and I are going to have a baby, I don't want to take any chances. I love Hogan, and I will be a good and faithful mother. How many more cliches are we going to use here? I wondered. All that's left is to come home and find an unfamiliar car in the driveway and men having fun in my bed for it to be over. I wanted to run into the room and scream. I wanted to trash the room, but my muscles stiffened with paralysis. I was so stunned I couldn't move. My heart was pounding in my ears. So, cold turkey? Olivia asked. Kelly giggled again. Well, not exactly cold turkey, she admitted. I have a conference with Paul in Pittsburgh next week. We'll have a farewell entertainment there. I'll miss you, of course, but Hogan and the baby are more important. I couldn't take it anymore, but I didn't know what to do. I love Kelly, but it was killing me. My business training was starting to take its toll. I needed to step back and think. I needed to make a plan. I started stomping up the steps like I was climbing a ladder. Then I opened the door and walked into the kitchen. Kelly and Olivia were sitting there with cups of tea in front of them. I saw a hint of guilt on Kelly's face. Honey, are you okay? She asked in a concerned voice. I realized tears were streaming down my cheeks. Allergies, I mumbled. This is going to be a bad spring. Well, go upstairs and take a shower. Throw your clothes in the bathroom and I'll wash them right away so they don't contaminate your closet. I bought you a new pack of Claritin D last week. It's in the medicine cabinet. Thanks, I mumbled and headed for the stairs. I needed time to think. The next morning was Monday, and I used the excuse of an early meeting to get up and out of the house before Kelly got out of bed. The night before, I had used my allergies as an excuse to go to bed early because my emotions were running high. Sitting on the train, I thought again about what I had heard. On one hand, my wife was unfaithful, but in the end it was a purely sexual affair to stay with me and bear me a child. Some would say that I should leave it at that and be happy that my wife is back in the marriage, planning to be a good wife and mother. However, there is a voice in my head that says that if she did it once, what's to stop her from doing it again in the future? In 10 years, when the kids are in school, won't she have another just sexy affair? And then there will be a divorce with kids, in which Kelly will likely get the kids and I will get impressive alimony and maintenance. As an accountant and business analyst, I had to think in terms of risk and reward. I found myself doing the same here. It came down to the fact that my trust in my wife was completely undermined. The just sex excuse overlooks what is the really important issue in these cases. It is a complete lack of respect for the partner. The cheater knows they are doing wrong and hurting the other person. Otherwise, they would be doing it openly, and I would have known about it from the beginning. Don't get me wrong, I don't think I would have ever put up with her sleeping with Don, but at least if she had talked to me about it, At least some respect would have been shown. Kelly's behavior proved to me how much respect she had for me. I was working, but part of my brain was focused on what I should do. I had no evidence other than an overheard conversation. I hadn't even noticed much of anything in the last 6 months that the affair had lasted. A direct confrontation without evidence would be a big risk with little chance of reward. Kelly will deny everything. Paul Evans would deny everything. Taking the case through the courts would be financial suicide since every judge, politician, and lawyer in the surrounding counties knew Evans. I would be buried to keep his name clean. I considered just leaving and starting over somewhere else. It was tempting. But the house would be like an anchor around my neck. Kelly couldn't afford it on her paycheck alone, and we had almost no equity. She'd have to sell it almost immediately to avoid foreclosure, and with the current state of the market, that was unlikely. It would have ruined both my credit history and hers. Being a CPA with a bad credit history is not a good decision when looking for a new position. How can someone trust you with someone else's money when you clearly don't know how to handle your own? I needed proof before I could do anything about it. I got it, but from the most unlikely source. 3 days later, I kept my wits about me, but I still hadn't found any evidence to back up what I'd heard. Her personal laptop was clean. No secret email accounts were found. No clothes hidden in a box in the back of her closet. No receipts from places she wasn't authorized to go. Absolutely nothing. Then Kelly called me at work and told me we were invited to a party at Paul Evans's house Friday night. I assumed it would be his high-profile announcement that he was running for the U.S. Senate. I had thoughts of a high-profile announcement, but I still didn't have proof, damn it. We arrived just in time for the start of the event. Evans had a beautiful mansion near Washington Crossing with a small horse farm. A large tent was set up in the backyard for all the guests. And when we walked in at the head of the line for the reception, like a king, stood asshole Paul Evans himself. Being a widower, Evans didn't have a wife to play hostess, but he had apparently enlisted his 21-year-old daughter to play the role. She stood beside her father and greeted guests as if she was born to do so. When it was our turn, Evans smiled broadly at Kelly and exclaimed, "Kelly, you did it! How wonderful!" He kissed my wife chastely on the cheek. Then he turned to me. "Robert, it's good to see you again. I'd be lost without your wife, but I realize I'll have to give her up soon when you start expanding your family." He laughed at his own joke. "Just let me have her when you break up with her and there will be no hard feelings." Laughter erupted again. Kelly even blushed slightly and I felt like finishing the cocky jerk off. I took his hint, which obviously seemed incomprehensible to him. "Who knows what the future will bring?" I said in an even neutral tone. Not hostile, but by no means friendly either. "I'm reporting the results of the audit right now." Evans blushed slightly, and Kelly nudged me with her elbow and muttered something about rudeness. Evans smoothly moved on to the next guest, leaving us alone with his daughter. Kelly was an incredibly attractive woman, but Barbara Evans was a vision. Even in my inner anger, I noticed it. Her dark red hair and brilliant smile made me think of a young Maureen O'Hara. She had that combination of great looks, healthy figure, hair and skin that photographers dream of and so often have to use Photoshop to achieve. Paul Evans had the perfect political threesome. He looked like the perfect wise statesman and family man. After losing his wife to cancer, he acquired the perfect spouse. She was idolized, and any rival who attacked her was ready for career suicide. Barbara was a princess, prom queen, graduate of the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in business and law, former gymnast, and current member of the University of Pennsylvania cheerleading team. According to Kelly's rumor, Barbara planned to try out for the Eagles cheerleading squad at the upcoming open competition, as she had just turned 21. With a late wife and a smart, beautiful, photogenic daughter, the press would love him on the campaign trail. "Robert," Barbara said excitedly, hugging me tightly. This wasn't a polite hug at a party. It was a full-body hug. Parts of her body pressed against me, and it felt really good. "You look great. No wonder Kelly's been hiding you. You never come to any of our parties. You shouldn't work so hard. It's not healthy." Somehow, she said it all in one breath. In less than a second, my mood changed from fury to complete shock. I made a few polite remarks about how beautiful she looked and was about to leave when two thoughts suddenly occurred to me. First, Barbara never said hello to Kelly. And second, what kind of parties are these? Kelly didn't give me a chance to ask as she herself rushed over to greet the young woman. Then we had no choice but to give way to the next in line of guests. As Kelly and I chatted, I wondered what Barbara knew. Pouring my wife a drink, I asked, "What kind of parties was Barbara talking about?" Kelly only smiled and snorted dismissively. "She was just teasing you, little prankster. Paul sometimes holds team meetings and strategy sessions here. He says he thinks better with a drink in his hand, and at the bar you never know who might be in the next booth. The few times we've met here, she's been home. That's when I figured it out. This bastard was entertaining my wife right in her own home under the guise of team meetings. Maybe they were even real meetings where Kelly was the last one to leave. Or maybe she left first and came back after everyone else left. That would keep the legal department from speculating about why Kelly always stayed behind to help her boss clean up the mess. With a dead wife and daughter away at college, he didn't need to find a secluded hotel room. Hence, no record of their meeting. So Barbara attends your team meetings? I asked. Kelly waved the question away. No, she's been home a few times when classes were canceled. She's just teasing her dad for throwing parties during work hours. She tugged on my arm. Come on, honey. Let's go pamper your fiancé. For the next hour, Kelly didn't take a step away from me. We talked to a few of her coworkers, and a few of them talked about our plans to have a baby and how sorry they would be to lose Kelly for a while, but how happy they were for Kelly and me. Honestly, I was a little puzzled. Why did all these people know about our plans? An hour later, Paul Evans called everyone to attention. His daughter stood next to him and smiled. He began by thanking everyone for coming and then announced his big campaign. Everyone was expecting it, but was still excited. I noticed the publisher of the local paper and one of his reporters taking notes. I'm sure there will be a lot written about it in tomorrow's paper. I won't bore you with the rest of the details of the party. It would have been an enjoyable time if my heart hadn't been shattered and my brain hadn't been working at maximum capacity thinking about how to prove it all. About 90 minutes after the grand announcement, Margaret Williamson, the first assistant district attorney, came in and said Paul wanted to meet with his staff. Paul was an elected official, and Margaret was a senior staffer who actually ran the office. District attorneys could come and go every 4 years, but Margaret was permanent. A very tough woman, yet respected in the legal community for her honesty and integrity. The older female attorney was one of the reasons Kelly accepted the position. I liked her a lot. Margaret had been married for more than 30 years to an electrician who had taught her in college and now owned a pretty good electrical selection company. These two were devoted to each other. I always considered them an example to Kelly and me. I apologize for stealing your wife away from you, Hogan, Margaret offered. Paul wants to discuss office organization as soon as he finishes campaigning. After a moment, they were both gone. I stepped away from the small cluster of spouses left behind after the meeting and headed toward the other side of the large pool across from the patio where the party was being held. There was a wicker swing chair hanging from chains. It was in the shade so people could see me if they looked closely, but I wasn't conspicuous. In other words, it was the perfect place to try to gather my thoughts. I had been sitting for less than 5 minutes when a voice invaded my solitude. "So this is where you're hiding," the voice purred. I looked up. Barbara had lowered herself onto the wicker swing next to me. She had arranged herself so that she was sitting facing me without saying a word. The little black dress sat on her tanned thighs in a way that clung to her body, hinting at what was underneath, but revealing nothing. Seductive and innocent at the same time. It spoke volumes about my state of mind that I noted it almost academically. "You look like a man who has the weight of the world on his shoulders," she commented. I didn't really feel like talking about this with the daughter of my wife's lover, no matter how beautiful she was. "We've been very busy at the office, lots of audits," I said to end the conversation. "Really?" Barbara asked in an interested tone. "I just finished my last accounting course in school. In several classes, we talked about the use of forensic accounting in law enforcement. I found it very fascinating. Even in my grief, this surprised me." "Really?" I asked in an incredulous tone. "Well, it's not very pretty, but it's really detective work to pick out all the right pieces of information from a mass of other facts and put them together to get a clear picture. Plus, since some people are trying to hide this information, it gets even more complicated." "Most people look at it differently," I admitted. Barbara began to elaborate on what she had learned in the class and why she had enjoyed it so much. I have to say I was impressed. I've had people interning at my firm who couldn't have covered the topic so well. Focusing on her words, I brushed off both her stare and, more importantly, the rage boiling inside me. I felt myself sinking into my role as a mentor. It helped me take my mind off the emotional turmoil a bit. You really enjoyed the class, I remarked. You seem to have internalized the topic very well. Barbara blushed at my praise. For a moment, I saw a sweet girl who was genuinely touched by my praise. Actually, I was thinking about joining the FBI when I graduate from high school. Dad wants me to become a prosecutor or go to work at one of his friend's law firms. I don't think that's what I want to do. You should follow your own dreams, not your father's. It was honest advice, not that I was opposed to ruining the jerk's plans. I've done a little work with the FBI when audits turned up something criminal, sharp people. Before Barbara could respond, Kelly stepped out of the shadows. That's where you disappeared to. You didn't do anything obscene? She asked in a teasing tone. Barbara turned to my wife and smiled radiantly. We were just talking about Bob's work. We were just discussing it in class. I wanted to get an expert's opinion. Well, Hogan is just that, Kelly said proudly. I looked at one of his audit reports where an employee was embezzling money using his boss's authority. Hogan caught on that some of the transfers were happening when the guy was on a business trip, but the login was from the corporate office. Most of us would have stopped when we recognized the boss. Hogan kept digging. I could have gotten a conviction against that employee the first day out of law school. Hogan left the prosecutor's office, no chance of success. Kelly looked at me with pride on her face as she told this little story. It embarrassed the hell out of me. How could she be proud of me and claim to love me while being in a 6-month relationship with her damn boss? A shadow of confusion must have flashed across my face because Kelly asked, "What's wrong, honey?" "Nothing," I replied. "Just thinking about a problem." "Well, stop it. It's a party," Kelly admonished. She struggled to catch her breath and said, "Hogan, you'll never be able to guess the opportunity I've been given. Paul and Margaret want me to take over the administrative work since I plan to go on maternity leave as soon as you finish your job. That way, when I leave, there won't be any work left to do. I will be working directly for Margaret." Something in my heart twitched at the thought of Kelly being away from that bastard Paul, but my hopes were dashed after a second. "I'll have to travel sometimes," Kelly continued. "I'll be delivering important papers to Paul during the campaign, so I won't be involved in his campaign, but I'll still get to see some of the behind-the-scenes action. It's going to be so much fun." I felt my heart shatter again. I know I'd heard Kelly say she planned to end the affair so we could have a baby, but I could easily imagine her going back to the affair in the run-up to the campaign. And if she gets pregnant, who's to say the baby will be mine? Gender is my height and skin color. Without a DNA test, that would be very difficult to determine. My anger started to rise, but I held it back. Now was not the time. Barbara started talking to Kelly about her new position and the campaign. Soon they were engrossed in their conversation and I was forgotten about. I took this opportunity to pull myself together. After tonight, I would start making plans. I needed to counter Paul's political power somehow, but frankly, I had no idea how to do it. The answer showed up in my office 2 days later. The next chapter. "Your appointment is at 4 o'clock, my secretary called through the open door. We're not allowed to call them secretaries anymore. I looked at my Outlook calendar and saw nothing scheduled there. Before I could respond, she, Barbara Evans, walked in. "Hi, Hogan." She said hello as she entered the office. "I hope you don't mind," Barbara began. She closed my office door behind her. "I told Mary we had an appointment to discuss my career and how Kelly works for my father." I politely rose from my chair. "I'm glad to see you. I was just working on some reports." I gestured for her to take one of the chairs in front of my desk. When she was seated, I sat down. "What did you want to talk about?" The happy expression on Barbara's face suddenly disappeared. "I think you know, Bob. I saw it in your face when you were talking to my bastard father. I'm so sorry he destroyed such a good guy." I was stunned. This was not what I had expected. "What are you talking about?" I asked cautiously. Barbara grimaced. "About that asshole known as my father having an affair with your wife." I leaned back in my chair at such a straightforward answer. "Did you just find out?" Barbara asked softly. I nodded. "I'm very sorry." When did you find out?" I asked. "About 3 months ago," Barbara admitted. I don't know when it started, but I found out in February. I came home early one Friday and we were having one of their meetings at our house. I had a late lunch with a high school friend, so I just ran in there to drop off my stuff, say hello, and leave. Dad asked when I'd be home, and I said after dinner. Turns out my friend was sick and couldn't make it. I grabbed a bite to eat and went home. I saw Dad and Kelly. I took a picture of them. You took a picture of them? I asked in shock. I also wondered if I could get copies of the pictures. That would be very helpful in the divorce. As if reading my mind, Barbara reached into her bag, pulled out a large envelope and placed it on my desk. Here are pictures of that day and a few others. She paused and grinned. Dad installed a security system in the house. Everything outside is locked, and there are cameras in several rooms. If you know the website and have the key fob and password, you can get into the house from almost anywhere. There's a thumb drive with video on it, too. I was shocked by this. Paul's daughter was handing me everything I could possibly need to divorce and destroy her father. Why? I asked. The sad expression on Barbara's face was replaced with anger. Because, she said in a quiet voice, I hate that bastard more than you ever could. I answered nothing, but waited. After a moment, she spoke. Dad met Mom when she was in college. He was an aspiring attorney who was assigned to the Philadelphia Crime Squad. Mom had come from Ireland to study. Her family lived in affluence but was killed in the Londonderry bombing. She came here to get a break from the turmoil. There was a soft note in her voice that she had probably adopted from her mother. Mom dated some loser who hit her so hard she ended up in the emergency room. Kelly paused and placed a small book on my desk. It was quite thick and decorated with green lace. I found her diary after she died, and she was something of a submissive. She liked to be commanded by a strong man. This asshole took it too far and she ended up in the hospital. Dad was assigned the case. They met. The asshole went to jail, and a year later they were married. Dad was always ambitious. He got a smart, beautiful woman with an exotic accent. Mom got a strong man who would protect her. I came along a few years later. Dad wanted me to do gymnastics. He thought his daughter's performance in the Olympics would do wonders for his political career. Do you know how most gymnasts' careers end? I shook my head and replied, I never really thought about it. Barbara smiled. I was advised to go into cheerleading and become an all-American girl. I didn't mind, as I enjoyed performing, but then I realized I was just a prop for my father's ambitions. Mom knew about it almost from the beginning. Dad had been having affairs almost from the moment they got married. Mom knew and begged him to stop, but she was too weak to do anything about it. She felt trapped. She was a staunch Catholic, so divorce was out of the question. Barbara paused for a moment and I let her gather her thoughts. After a moment, she continued. Sometimes I wonder if her bad reaction to the cancer treatment was the result of her subconsciously wanting to die or actively sabotaging the treatment. Anyway, I was with her in the hospital when she died. The official story goes that my father was in court seeking a murder charge. He got the doctor to change the time of death. He was actually entertaining his assistant at her apartment to celebrate. He simply displayed the mom as a trophy and the press loved the story of how they met. Heroic prosecutor goes to rescue the woman. Hell, the bastard beat her up himself more than once for all I know. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. Because you don't deserve it, Hogan. My father, he's not a very nice man. After my mom died, he hid his affairs until I went away to college. Then he started having meetings at the house. And they aren't just for his work. He also holds meetings for some of the charitable groups he's involved in. I know for a fact that he sleeps with 2 other women from these groups. One of the poor women thinks it's true love and is going to leave her husband. Kelly thinks that? I asked. I knew I'd heard that before, but I was still curious. Barbara shook her head and replied, No, she seems to think it's just entertainment. They say power is the best aphrodisiac. Kelly seems to be proof of that. I heard her talking to her father about some senator they were dating and how she felt when she got back to Doylestown. I flinched at such a rude remark. I even remembered that day. I had come home to a wild woman, and it had been one of the best nights of my life. Now the cherished memory was tarnished because I knew my wife probably wasn't even thinking about me at that moment. So what do you want? I asked. To her credit, Barbara looked me straight in the eye as she answered. I want you to end your marriage to that cheating husband of yours. I want my father's career ruined to the point where he will never be elected dog catcher in a town full of cats. I thought about just sending my stuff to the papers or even the other side, but he has too many friends. I think together we can make them pay. Won't it be harder for you to finish school? She shook her red hair again. No, my mom left me an inheritance in the form of a trust fund. I didn't touch it, but if I needed to, I could pay for the rest of my tuition and MBA, and I'd still have a good chunk of money left over. If your mom had that much money, why didn't she take you and leave? She could have gone to Ireland, where your father couldn't get to. Barbara wrinkled her nose. Like I said, she was raised Irish Catholic. She was taught that divorce was not an option. No matter what happened, Mom held on to her faith until the very end. That's the only thing that makes me think her death was unconscious rather than intentional, since suicide is also considered an unpardonable sin among them. I have to admit that I saw nothing but the truth in Barbara. She had said she wanted to destroy her father's career, and the fact that I had this information did not bode well for his ambitions. I couldn't imagine that this could be some kind of trap. If Kelly and Paul wanted to wipe me off the face of the earth, they could do it openly in court. That kind of despicable shit was only appropriate if they were desperate, like me. A plan began to form in my head. I need Barbara to help me with a few things. It would show me how determined she was to destroy her father. Okay, I agreed. But I don't want to destroy him by publishing those pictures or even calling his name in the divorce. Barbara looked at me in surprise. Why not? She demanded. Her face flushed with passion and she took a breath to start some kind of speech. I stopped her with a raised hand. I didn't say we wouldn't destroy it, but I don't want to deal with the bad press when my cuckold husband is involved in a political scandal. Instead, I want to destroy what he's strived for his entire life. Destroy his power and influence, and I can have a quiet and peaceful divorce that no one will worry about. Barbara looked at me with shock on her face. After a moment, a sly smile appeared on her face. What do you want from me? I smirked. I'm going to do what I do best. Get me his financial records, personal and campaign. They got Capone thanks to tax evasion. Knowing your father, I'm sure I can find something. And if you don't find... What? She asked. I smiled. There is something I can do. Next chapter. For the next 3 days, Barbara and I were busy. She installed a keystroke logger on my father's personal laptop and home computer. She also made a full backup of his computer's hard drive. We customized their security system so that it would upload the recordings to a cloud storage system that I knew was physically located overseas. How nice of the asshole to install a bug in his own home. For my part, I didn't tap Kelly's phone. Thanks to Barbara's evidence, I didn't need anything else. But I did activate a GPS tracker designed for parents watching their kids. It basically used cell towers for location unless I sent a command to activate the GPS. I just didn't want him to catch me at home when I was busy working. I faked a groin injury the day after Barbara first came to see me. It gave me an excuse not to do it with my wife. Never thought I'd have to make up an excuse not to do it with my beloved wife. After I found out the number of Paul's partners, I didn't want to risk even more than I unknowingly did. Besides, I don't think I could have done it without venting my anger. By the way, I made a doctor's appointment to get checked for STDs. Nothing showed up at first, but some of them, like HIV, can go months without testing positive for antibodies. Kelly went to a conference in Pittsburgh for her last date with Paul. Not surprisingly, she was very excited about the trip. She had been left hanging for the past few days. Some guys might have given her a farewell entertainment as revenge. My problem was that somewhere inside I still loved her. I could never trust her again, but that didn't mean I didn't love her. But I also couldn't bear the thought of entertaining her after what I'd learned. Thursday morning came, and Kelly was waiting with her packed bag for Paul and a junior associate from their office who was traveling with them to a conference. I wondered if the young guy knew he was their cover. So I'll be home Sunday afternoon, Kelly said, walking over to me after dropping my bag at the front door. I sat at the table with my back to her and sipped my coffee. She put her arm around me and leaned in so that her lips were next to my ear. I hope you're feeling better, and we can get started on the baby, she whispered. Her tone would have revived even a dead man, and her scent, it brought me back to more innocent days. I wanted to cry right there, but I managed to restrain myself. I'll ice it so it heals, I assured her. I stroked her hand and kissed her forehead. I wouldn't want to go to this. It would be so much better to just stay home with you. You could always tell Evans that something more important showed up, I said. It just showed up. And from the way she looked at me, she heard something in my tone. What's the problem, Paul? She asked in an astonished voice. First you were rude at the party and now you sound like you hate the man. I forced myself to calm down and shrugged. Honestly, I've seen too many hot jerks like Evans who think they're untouchable and the epitome of power. They're the big fish in a small pond. They sell the illusion of power and get people to buy into it. Like that mayor in South Carolina last year. Big, powerful guy embezzled the city's money by sleeping with 3 married women. Now he's serving 10 years in federal prison and they're all divorced and publicly humiliated. I have the same feeling about Evans. If he makes it to Washington, he'll be entertaining uncomprehending interns within a week. But eventually, his wheels fall off, and his shit will splatter everyone around him when it does. Kelly looked at me in shock. She'd heard me rant about these scumbags before, but she'd never connected Evans to them before. I probably should have kept my mouth shut, but it felt good to let it out. Even though our marriage was over, I felt it was only fair to warn Kelly. I still loved her, even if I would never trust her again. Hogan, that's a terrible thing to say about Paul, Kelly objected. He's a good man who's done a lot for the people of this county. He's not like that. I heard an almost pleading tone in her denial. At the most inopportune moment, we heard the sound of a car horn outside the house. Paul had arrived. Kelly sighed disappointedly. She threw me a look that quickly flashed regret and almost fear. I'll be home in 4 days, Kelly said in a conciliatory tone. Then we can talk about it. But be prepared, honey. We're having a baby. Then she hugged me and kissed me. Have a good week, she breathed out. I love you. I love you too, I replied. She grabbed her bag and opened the front door. Bye, sweetie, she said over her shoulder. Bye, Kelly, I said. Then I closed the door. 30 minutes later, I left the house to catch the train into town. Barbara and I had an appointment at the FBI. It turned out that I didn't need to prepare any evidence. Paul Evans' embezzlement abilities I would rate as moderately intelligent. Barbara and I met at her off-campus apartment to go over the documents she pulled from his computer. Pretty standard procedure. By my calculations, he had about $2 million stashed away in an offshore account. At least that's how much he transferred into it, but I can't be sure it's still there because those records weren't included. Most of this money came from various small donors who wouldn't raise suspicion with the IRS. But why were people from other states donating to the DA's campaign? I was able to track down several of them. People connected to defendants whose cases were dismissed or plea bargains with unusually lenient sentences. The biggest bombshell was discovered by Barbara. Turns out she wasn't an only child. Along the way, Evans knocked up 2 other women. One of them was born 3 years before his wife's death. The baby's mother was one of his co-workers at the time. The 3rd child was born 8 months after his wife's death to an 18-year-old female volunteer at the hospital where his wife was being treated. Evans transferred $2,000 a month from campaign contributions to each woman as poll research consultants. Barbara nearly trashed her own apartment in anger. That red hair really is a warning. By the time Kelly and Paul left, we had already figured out everything in Paul's notes. There were still questions, but we didn't have enough resources to get to the information. So I wrote down all the findings and set up a meeting with a senior FBI agent I worked with in the Philadelphia office. Barbara came in to tell him the story we had come up with. Barbara said that after taking a course in forensic accounting, she wanted to look at the actual records. She decided to look at her father's records out of innocent curiosity. When she noticed some oddities, she called me because my wife had worked for her father and knew of my experience. Gary was a seasoned professional. He knew there was more behind it, but we threw a gift-wrapped present in his lap and he didn't push it. A dirty prosecutor in his own backyard. A dirty prosecutor who just launched a campaign for the U.S. Senate. This career-enhancing case fell like manna from heaven. We caught a cab to Barbara's apartment, since she had a late class, and I walked to the 30th Street station to catch the train home. I was already thinking about packing up and leaving when Kelly came home. Gary promised to expedite the case and at least subpoena Evans's records by Wednesday. It was unlikely the investigation would make it by then. That bastard will realize how illusory his power is when all the rats abandon his ship. Kelly called me on the train ride home. She said she called early because they were going to some big dinner, and it would be very late before she got back to her room. I had no doubt she wasn't going to stay in her room tonight. I made a few vague remarks saying it was fine. She caught my distracted tone and asked what was wrong. I just had a meeting with FBI agents on a case, I replied. I'm on the train, plus the investigation is still ongoing, so I can't talk about it. All of this was the absolute truth. It sounds like you've been really hurt by this, Kelly said, her tone concerned. Yeah, but it's going to be awful. It'll probably make national news when the whole story leaks out. Really? Kelly asked, looking a little intrigued. Can't you give me a little hint? I couldn't resist. Tricky politician, bribes, money laundering, adultery. Typical summer romance crap. Anyone I know? I grimaced. I've already said too much already. If I say anything else, the Bureau will shut me down. Oh, you're no fun, Kelly pouted. Don't worry, honey. Your secret is safe with me. We said our goodbyes and she left. Next chapter. As I walked into the house, it hit me. My marriage was over. We had dated and married. We had been together for 10 years. I never expected to be single again, but that's what I was facing now. I ended up just sitting on the couch and waiting for the sun to set. I just sat there and watched. I felt like I was watching my life disappear over the horizon. I was just watching. It was many hours after sunset before I stirred again. It was Saturday afternoon when I emerged from my state of self-pity. I won't say I didn't deserve an indulgence, but I knew I needed to shake things up. Ironically, I was mowing the lawn again when I saw a BMW convertible pull into my driveway. I stopped the mower and saw Barbara get out of the car. I turned off the engine and greeted her. Well, you look better than I expected, Barbara said. I half expected I'd have to pull you out of a bottle or pull you down from a ledge. I snorted. Last night I'd given both options a lot of thought. Had to, I said. Besides, it takes my mind off work. Not seeing a lawyer? She asked. I shrugged. I did that on Tuesday before they even left. The paperwork will be ready on Monday. I arranged to do an audit with a client in Austin and leave on Tuesday. Usually, these business trips last 3 days, and then I work remotely until the report is ready. In this case, I'll be there all 3 weeks. I shrugged. It's probably a coward's way out, but I don't want to stay here when this whole mess is over. I saw the agreement on Barbara's face. She knew it would draw attention to her too, as the bastard's daughter. Well, I'm glad you're thinking ahead, the redhead said, but I realize that's what you're good at. She smiled again. Now I know how to plan too. Okay, here's my plan, Barbara announced. I'm going to help you finish your work here, and then you're going to come over to my place. We'll have fun, and you can even fondle me as much as you want. I have a swimsuit you'll really like. The last part was spoken in a voice that could raise the dead. I tried to justify myself. Barbara, I'm still married, I protested. And I don't think I'll be ready for anything else for a while. You need to blow off some steam before you blow up, the red-haired girl insisted. Besides, you know the old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Her gaze was playful, sly, and guileless at the same time. I couldn't help but laugh. Next chapter. By one of those bizarre coincidences that prove truth is stranger than fiction, we ran into Olivia. After finishing up my yard work, I cleaned up and we headed out for a late lunch at a nice restaurant. I wasn't in the mood for vindictive fun, but it was nice to get out of the house. And going on a date with a woman as nice as Barbara, and who looked just like Barbara, wouldn't be difficult at all. As I pulled up to the restaurant, I noticed a car parked a little closer to it. It was Oliva's car. I always thought it was a crime to put OBX and Jersey Shore bumper stickers on a Mustang GT. I almost told Barbara to turn around and we'd find another place, but I didn't. Instead, I did something completely uncharacteristic of myself. It was all done on a whim. After all my careful planning, something inside me just exploded when I saw Olivia's car parked in that lot. I nonchalantly hugged the red-headed beauty and without further ado, escorted her to the restaurant. I tipped the owner to seat us at a particular table. It was a little shaded, but it was clearly visible when we returned from the restroom. I sat Barbara facing outward and settled down next to her. She smiled when I took her hand. What brought this on? She asked with a sweet smile. Not that I'm complaining. I laughed. Remember when I told you about how I found out about my cheating wife? About her friend Olivia? Well, her car is parked right on this street. Barbara broke into a throaty laugh. So I'm going to be the other woman? Ooh, I can live with that. She leaned forward and kissed me. Our entrees arrived, and I was frankly enjoying myself. I had forgotten about the pratfalls, enjoying Barbara's company. Her keen sense of humor was killing me. Never before had I heard accounting services sound so dirty. Casually glancing around, I noticed Olivia walk past us. I pointed her out to Barbara. Oh my God, she giggled. I've been looking forward to this. With those words, she leaned forward to kiss me. I was so immersed in the sensations that I was surprised to hear Olivia yelling at me. Hogan, what the hell are you doing? She yelled at me. Who's the tramp? Running after your wife while she's out of town? I thought better of you. I have no doubt the whole restaurant heard her. I let go of Barbara and turned to look at my former friend. What's your problem, Liv? This is just light entertainment before Kelly and I settle down and have a baby. And you'll be able to keep yourself from doing it? People are trying to eat. Olivia stared at me like I'd hit her with a dead fish. What? She started. Come on, Liv. Kelly's doing the same thing. I'm sure she's having fun with her boss right now. Has been for months now. So I figured it was only fair that I entertain the boss's adult daughter. I think Olivia almost had a heart attack. I felt Barbara start to giggle. You know about? Olivia stammered. I know about being a faithful husband who doesn't realize anything while my wife is running around the streets with the help of a woman I thought was a close friend. Olivia wrinkled at the contempt in my voice. I know Kelly wanted one last taste of weirdness before having a baby. Sort of like a last fling before the wedding. If it was okay for her, what do you have against me? I had no information that Kelly had had any affairs before Paul's asshole, but as the saying goes, once a cheater, always a cheater. I tried to voice my suspicions in the dark and wondered if Liv would go out of her way to confirm them. She said, You know about that too? She sighed. No, but thanks for the confirmation, I replied. Olivia turned pale. Go away, Olivia, I said. She turned and ran away from the table. A few minutes later, we heard a noise. It was Olivia leaving the restaurant. Well, it was fun while it lasted, Barbara said with a slight chuckle. I really wish she'd been there longer. Her smile made me blush. You know she's probably on the phone with your wife right now, she added. Probably, I agreed. I'm giving her 5 minutes before my phone goes off. However, if she leaves right now, the drive home from Pittsburgh will take 5 hours. That will give us time for dessert, and that will leave me plenty of time to get home and pack. Too bad I won't get to see you in a bikini like you promised. Barbara laughed again. Oh, I guess we can do that another time. She reached out to grab my shirt and pull me closer. You know my semester ends in a week and a half, she whispered in my ear. I've always wanted to see Austin. I barely had time to catch her words before her tongue dug into my ear. Epilogue. Yeah, shit really hit the fan. Kelly started calling me 10 minutes after Olivia left the restaurant. I listened to a few of her messages and she was furious that I cheated on her. It almost made me laugh. After an hour of her messages and texts, I blocked her number. I knew she would eventually just call from another phone, but she was driving from Pittsburgh in her car, so she couldn't just ask to borrow someone's phone on the highway. I came home and packed up all my personal belongings, not just the ones for the trip to Austin. I had time. 4 hours after meeting Olivia, I was leaving the house probably for the last time. After depositing most of my belongings in a storage locker, I checked into a hotel near the Philadelphia airport until I found a place to stay. I talked to Barbara a few times on the phone. She had gone to a friend's house since her father was now leaving furious messages on her phone. I rescheduled my flight to Austin for the day and left Monday morning. Kelly managed to call my phone a few times from other numbers. Now it was tearful rants about how I could do this to her, why I ruined her career, etc., etc., etc. Apparently, Olivia's initial outrage got the attention of a lot of people. Then someone posted a pretty accurate account on their blog and called Barbara and I players. My comment about Kelly having fun with Paul was also published, as was the fact that they were together in Pittsburgh over the weekend. This caused quite a stir in county political circles and at the courthouse. For the rest of the week, I avoided most news from Philadelphia. It wasn't until Friday that I received an email that told me what was happening in Doylestown. Surprisingly, it was from Margaret, a senior manager in the DA's office. The elderly attorney was apologizing for everything that had happened. She knew that Paul had been seeing two women outside the office, but knew nothing about Kelly's involvement. She also welcomed the fact that I had used the law against the attorney in retaliation. According to Margaret, that week at DA Buck's office was eventful. On Monday morning, Paul was in the office trying to smooth things over and denying any inappropriate behavior on his part. It was just my daughter rebelling under the influence of a cheating husband, was how he tried to present his story. And on Tuesday, Kelly was served with divorce papers on the grounds of adultery. The envelope contained photos, DVDs, and a letter from me. To Kelly's scream of horror as she read my note, Margaret and two others ran into the office. Kelly collapsed in her chair in shock, and Margaret noticed the photos scattered across the desk. In the letter, I informed Kelly that I wasn't having an affair, but I hoped that she now understood how I felt about her and the jerk. I told her I couldn't be married to someone I didn't trust, especially now that I found out she'd already cheated. There wasn't much to do at the DA's office on Tuesday. The next day, Margaret was in Paul's office for a meeting when four men in suits suddenly walked in. Paul was yelling at them for interrupting an important meeting when one of the men informed Paul that he had been arrested. He was in complete shock as they handcuffed him and led him out of the office, she said. They walked him right through the front door of the courthouse and let the reporters through, who had somehow been alerted. I owe Gary a few beers for that. At the end of her letter, Margaret apologized for allowing them to behave in her office. She also asked me to let her know if I needed anything, as I did not deserve this behavior. I'm sure part of her letter had to do with damage control, but mostly I think Margaret was the moral and professional person I always thought she was. Now all my plans for a quiet divorce have gone to hell because of my own stupid, impulsive antics with Olivia at that restaurant. The Philadelphia news stations quickly learned of Paul's arrest and the charges against him. As I told Kelly, the story had all the hallmarks of a summer romance: betrayal, revenge, and too much angst. News outlets loved it, and it was quickly picked up by the hungry 24 news services. I managed to avoid the worst of it because I was out of town and they couldn't track me down, as I had booked a second hotel room 10 miles away from the one listed on my work itinerary. However, I checked in there, and the reporters positioned themselves around it trying to catch me. I'd seen on TV that they were camped out in front of my house. Kelly didn't come out, and they only managed to film my relatives going in and out of the house. Barbara had it the worst because she was the daughter who turned in her own father. She was still going to classes and taking exams, so for the first few days it was pretty easy for the press to find her. Then the school kicked the reporters off campus because they were disturbing the students. It also helped that two women who had children with Paul claimed their 15 minutes of fame. After wrapping up the last issue, Barbara slipped off campus and headed for the airport. The media was disappointed, but not too surprised when she didn't show up for her graduation ceremony. After a while, the story receded into the background and stayed there. It heated up when Paul's trial began, but he pleaded guilty to several charges, resulting in a 20-year sentence as a guest of the federal government. Fortunately, his guilty plea resulted in Barbara and I not being called to testify. After that, the case completely disappeared off their radar, taking Barbara, Kelly, and me with it. Oddly enough, after all the publicity, my divorce went through quickly and without a lot of fuss. Kelly signed the papers 4 days after receiving them. I received a letter apologizing for what she had done to me and to us. When she returned from Pittsburgh, she swore in a rage that she would never forgive me for cheating on her. When she found out that she was really the only one who had cheated, she realized how hypocritical she had been. She accepted my offer of a 50-50th split and asked that, at some point when things were less complicated, I agree to meet with her so she could apologize in person. She ended by saying that she would always love me and wished me well. I later learned from her mother that she had quit her job and moved to the Midwest to live with her aunt. Paul's elimination had an amazing impact on my career. In the press, the FBI gave me full credit for analyzing Paul's records. Because I was hiding from the same press, in Austin I was even more thorough and found not only the embezzler they were looking for, but a second embezzler they knew nothing about at the time. My firm promoted me and put me in charge of the white-collar crime team. And yes, some joker called that team Hogan's Heroes. But the best part was when I was given an associate, a recent college graduate looking to gain experience in forensic accounting. I never liked working late. The end. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next videos.